So I'm going to talk about your board tooth number 3 in both amalgam and composite. This is the amalgam video. And the first things first, I don't want to twist or screw these in too much. We want to make sure that the teeth don't wiggle, but that they flex. So this is number 2. This is okay, but this is number 3, and it's just maybe a smidge loose. So I'm going to just do a quarter turn of the screw and try again here. There, that's a little bit less give. So the give that it should be is just about that much. This one's tight, but it still has a little give, and number 2 has a little give. It should not be wiggly. They will correct that if it's wiggly. The next thing is that you want to choose the right wedge, and sometimes you need to wedge it for this accidental typodont a little differently. Here's where I have wedged it in the more traditional way and on the lingual side, but you can see there's a very large gap in between my buccal wall and the matrix band here. Also, I'm going to turn this a little bit. You're going to be able to see that my matrix band actually is not really touching the adjacent tooth. Let's see if I can make it a little bit easier to see that. There's the space. You can see right between the teeth. It's very subtle, but it's a little bit, and that's going to make it harder to get a good contact. So 2 things I need to do. I need to wedge this a little differently, and I need to undo my inner nut and loosen that matrix band and not have it quite so tight around that tooth. Let's see if that helps. I'm going to go ahead and I am going to, you can really see through it there, right there. You can see the orange of the wedge. Loosen it a little bit more here. Nope, that was tightening it. There we go. Now you can see hopefully you can see that it's closed. You can see that matrix band touching the premolar. And when I condense hard, it will touch even more firmly, and I will have a good contact there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fix this wedge here and be back. Okay, so now I have the box mostly closed. I say mostly, there is just a very slight gap right here, but it has been changed for the better. And I'm not worried about this gap right here. This gap I'm not so worried about. As long as my box is closed here, this can have all the gap that it wants. So please don't worry about that. All right, I'm going to ball burnish my contact, and then I'm going to get this filled off camera so that you don't need to watch that again, and then we'll talk about some of the other pitfalls in this prep with amalgam. So first things first, with condensing, you must condense at an angle in the interproximal part of this prep. If you do not, you will get voids in the corners. I almost guarantee it. Also, and I'm not worried about the excess squishing out there, also, you want to condense really, truly as hard as you can. This prep and this amalgam really needs it. So I'm making sure that I'm getting all my angles here. I do have to use my small condenser the majority of the time here, but just get those angles. Don't just do it up and down and think that that's going to be enough. Now that I have my prep all full, I am going to take my large condenser. This is the first time I've picked up this large condenser, and I'm going to condense still at an angle into my cavo surface margin. And it's going to be especially important for this marginal ridge. And I'm going to really come up onto the corner of each marginal ridge, and I'm going to push down really hard. The corners of this marginal ridge are really rounded in the prep, and that has made it really hard to get a nice marginal ridge with no voids and no breakage. So I really want you to make sure that if you're choosing amalgam, which I would if it were me, but that's just me, and I am not as good at composite, I would make sure that, and I'm just making sure I also have enough amalgam here, I would make sure that my cavo surface margin at the corners of each marginal ridge, so the lingual corner and the buccal corner, are nice and tight and have amalgam all the way into the cavo surface margin. Sorry about that. I have my setup here that's really close to my hand. I apologize for bumping it here. It's hard to get around sometimes. And I can't quite get around it for this angle here. There we go. Got it. Okay. So trying to get all those cable surface margins, and I'm making sure that I have all my cable surface margins covered. And I'm starting in the edge of my condenser in the central groove, and I'm sliding up the cable surface margin to make sure that I clear and burnish into the cable surface margin, but also that I'm just checking that cable surface margin, making sure the amalgam comes all the way up. Right here is where I'm having that problem, just because of the angle I have to be at right now. I'm going to see if I can't scoop some amalgam into that area. I'm just using a discoid cleoid. It's a little bit easier to get a grip on it. Right there. So always be assessing as you're moving along. Did I get everything I needed to get? The earlier on you find problems, the easier it is to fix. Not so easy when everything's done and it's hard and you find a problem. All right, we're going to keep going, and I'm going to video this part. I'm going to do my ball burnishing here. I'm still using the big end for now. Pushing that amalgam into the cable surface margin in all places here, and I will switch it up in a minute here. Now I like to use, for me personally, I like to use the point right in the central groove, and I'm just going to carve that central groove a little bit. I'm going to lay it on the other side here and do the same. But notice I'm not going over the marginal ridge when I do this. I don't want to collapse that marginal ridge. So I'm just making sure that I stay away, and I just took a little too much out right there. I got my toe a little too close to that mesial buccal cusp there, and I'm going to fix it if I can. I should be able to. It's still malleable. That's the one benefit. If you condense fast enough, you can change and fix these little mistakes. All right, it's not fixing. Let me just get my condenser back out, which you can totally do too. Let's get that back up in there. There we go. That helped. That little extra that came loose helped quite a bit. Okay. There. Now it's sealed. It looks different in person than it does on the video here. I can kind of still see that little spot there. I got it. All right, let's clear. With clearing on these MOs, remember you want your point toward the matrix band here. You don't want it straight down, but you're going to have to be almost straight up and down with this prep here. So I'm going to clear to the center, getting nice depth between the amalgam and the matrix band. Now I'm going to do the lingual. And the lingual has a lot more to clear because it curves much more. The tooth curve itself curves much more on the lingual side there. You're going to clear a lot more than maybe you think you need to. But this is looking pretty good. I'm going to clear this off and come back. Now that I'm back, I can evaluate that interproximal area, and that looks nice and closed to me. I don't see that the amalgam is away from that premolar at all. They are touching. That's exactly what I want, so I'm feeling good about that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clear my excess here in my lingual embrasure space. Remember, we're not carving or not removing calculus. We are using light pressure, and we're just sliding up this lingual cable surface margin here. I'm getting my toe in there to get that embrasure space nice and triangular and pointy right before the contact. And I'm not worried about blowing that contact out. I've got 2 millimeters between the lingual and the buccal, and I'm not using pressure. I'm not trying to poke through. I'm just touching it and sliding upwards, touching the contact point and sliding upwards. I'm flipping my instrument around to come and do the buccal side now. And I'm doing just a little bit of it at a time. I know that this blade is long on this IPC, but I'm really still using the toe end. I'm not trying to do the whole thing at once. These blades can be deceiving. We think we have to use the whole blade, but we're just really using the toe. There we go. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get my T3 out. I always, with my maxillary, start with my buckle first. Buckle's easier. The two triangular ridges are mostly even in size. So I'm going to do my buckle groove. And I'm going to do my buckle stop sign. So I'm going to look for that little depression between the cusp or the triangular ridge and the marginal ridge here. Here's that little depression. I'm going to make that groove. And I'm going to try to make that really controlled. I want to go down and come back out, and down and come back out. I don't want to accidentally move mesially and knock that marginal ridge off. So you do sometimes need to be a little controlled with that. Okay, and then I'm going to do my distal lingual groove. So I need to be at the same angle as my distal lingual groove with my instrument. And I don't want to go all the way to the cable surface margin, but I want to come close. I can start in front of that cable surface margin and go backwards, or I can slide down and go forwards as long as I don't get that cable surface margin. I'm going to brush the amalgam away. There we go. Hopefully you can see all these grooves. Now I'm going to carve my lingual stop sign. And unlike the mandibular teeth, my lingual stop sign is not going to be straight across. If I do that, I'm going to break my marginal ridge. I actually need to come into the cusp more and be at an angle, and I'm going to follow the angle of this part of the tooth here with my instrument. So it's going to be, the buckle is going to be very perpendicular, and the lingual is going to be at an angle but come and meet that buckle groove or stop sign that we made. That way the distance between this groove and the outside of the tooth is the same width as this part of the groove and this part of the marginal ridge on the outside here. So it needs to be the same width all the way across. And if I bring this like so, it's going to be too narrow here and you're going to lose support. And when you lose support, that's when you get breakage. I'm sorry. There we go. The last thing that I like to do is I like to make my supplemental groove that divides my mesiolingual cusp into the oblique and the transverse ridge. So I'm going to find that cusp tip and I'm going to just draw my instrument all the way down until it meets that buckle groove. There's my supplemental groove that divides that mesiolingual cusp in half. It looks over angled here in the video just because of the angle that the camera's at, but I promise you it's not quite as angled as it looks. It is angled, but not quite as much. Okay, let's carve. Remember, before I get started, toe where you want your central groove to be. If it helps you, kind of draw that central groove in. Okay? It's just dead center between this cable surface margin and this cable surface margin. Okay, so draw that in. There it is if you want it. I don't usually take that step because it is an extra step, but if it helps you, please do it. Toe in the central groove, side of the instrument against the cable surface margin. Make sure that your instrument is angled the same direction as your triangular ridge. So this triangular ridge is coming down at this angle. It is not at this angle. So we're going to make sure that I'm at the right angle, and we're going to go, and I'm going to go systematically from mesiobuccal to distal buccal to distal lingual to mesiolingual. now that I have the basics of the anatomy, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work on this marginal ridge. So I'm going to find the spillway here, or about where it should be. Remember, it's slightly lingual to the contact. That looks really center on my video, but it's also looking a little lingual in real life. Treat your marginal ridge just like any other triangular ridge. We're going to put my toe where I want that groove to be, in this case our spillway, and I'm going to slide down into that embrasure space. I'm going to slide down into that fossa. I'm going to keep the side of my instrument on the cavo surface margin, but I'm just not angled downward as much as I am for my central groove. There we go. That's looking really nice. I like the roundness of that marginal ridge. Let's see here. Remember, we need to be at the correct angle, so I shouldn't be like this. I need to be like so and match the angle of the marginal ridge there. Okay. There we are. And now I'm just going to do a little bit of defining with my instrument here. Defining and clean up. Okay, and I'm going to grab my discoid cleoid and just smooth and take off any of this other distracting material here. So remember, unless I need to round out a triangular, the top of a triangular ridge, I'm going to stay away from the tops of my triangular ridges, and I don't want to reduce height. I'm just going to stay on the sides of my triangular ridges, and I'm going to stay in my fossae and my grooves here. Right there. And with my cleoid, that was with my disc. If I didn't say it before, with my cleoid, I'm going to define some of my anatomy, define that buckle groove and make it smooth. So to make it smooth, I'm going to come down from my triangular ridges a couple of times, just in my normal carving stroke. The same way I would use the Hollenbeck side of my T3. There we go. I like that buckle groove much better. It's nice and defined. Let's see if I can define my lingual groove a little bit better here. There we go, and I can see this nice triangular fossa, just this little tiny triangular fossa right here. It's about where it should go because the distal lingual cusp takes up the rest of the space. So our triangular fossa is a little bit more buckle in this case. There, hopefully you can really see it now. And let's see here. Okay, two more things because I want you to know how to fix them. First of all, you can see that I have a little bit of excess in my occlusal embrasure space, so I'm going to run my IPC through that space, a little straight up and down, and a little bit of leaning against the marginal ridge to kind of smooth it and shape it. Notice I'm not pulling all the way to my buccal cavo surface margin, even though I am pulling buccal and I'm getting awfully close, but I am about right here. I'm lifting off the amalgam and I'm not carving all the way to that cavo surface margin. There we go. That looks a little bit better. And then I'm going to check the height of my marginal ridge here. So if I haven't shown you before, I'm going to use that with my, do that with my beaver tail. I'm going to find the spillway in my premolar, and I'm going to bring the edge of that beaver tail right over the top of the marginal ridge, make a small groove, and now we can carve and smooth and make sure that that marginal ridge, I just happen to be using my cleoid because it's getting a little hard, can make that marginal ridge exactly the perfect height from buccal and lingual. And I have my spillway definitively in the appropriate spot there. I feel like it's a little scratchy here. I'm going to define my stop sign a little bit more, particularly from the buccal side. There we go. And then lingual. And then I'm going to use my disc to smooth. I'm taking a little bit off the inside of my marginal ridge with this disc. There we go. That's what I thought. You could see exactly where I stopped my instrument on that last stroke. Right here. There's just this line. I'm going to point with my cleoid. There's a little line right here. That's where the edge of my instrument stopped. I didn't come all the way into my stop sign. So that's why we need to come all the way into our grooves. Otherwise we get those little details that we don't want. Try that. See if that's any better. That's a little better. Okay. Just trying to clean that up so you guys can see. Cleaning it up with my cleoid. It's getting hard enough now. I'm not super scared. This video right now is only 14 minutes long. So that'll give you an idea about how soon you can use that cleoid and how hard you can use it at that moment. If you're 15 minutes into it, pick that cleoid up. Don't be afraid of it. Okay. All right. All right, I'm going to call that good. That's pretty good. I think that would pass. I haven't checked the occlusion, of course, or the contact, but so far I'm liking it.